Last year, while wandering through the antique market on Portobello Road, something caught my eye on a vendor's table, an old banknote that read, "Eine Milliard Mark, 1 billion marks." Its edges yellowed, slightly worn but still legible. "Collectors love these," said the vendor with a laugh. "The price? £5. Wait a moment. 1 billion marks. A sum that wouldn't even have been laughable to a German in 1923 was now changing hands in London for £5. When I held that note, a strange feeling passed through me. This wasn't just a worn piece of paper. This was a tangible remnant of one of the greatest and most painful economic lessons history has ever given us. And today I want to tell you exactly that lesson. Think for a moment. You saved money your whole life. You worked for decades, cut your expenses, set things aside. And within a single year, without making any mistakes, without any bad investment decisions, just while you were sleeping, all those savings turned to paper. Not even enough to buy a loaf of bread anymore. This is not dystopian fiction. This is what happened to millions of people in Germany in 1923. And how it happened, why it happened, who profited from that chaos, who was ruined, and how this economic collapse paved the way for Adolf Hitler's rise. Today, we're going to talk about all of it. I work as an independent economic historian in London for over a decade now. I spend much of my time in the archives of the British Library, and sometimes I travel to various European cities to examine primary sources. I chose to work independently rather than pursue an academic career at university because I came to understand early on that history is not dry and distant the way it's told in textbooks. History is the cause of today's headlines, and the story of the Weimar Republic is, for me, not merely a period belonging to the past, but the clearest photograph of a mechanism that continues to touch our lives even now. Let us set the stage first. 1918. The First World War, which lasted 4 years, came to an end, and Germany was defeated. But this was no ordinary military defeat. The German army had not fought on its own soil. The front lines had always remained abroad, on foreign territory. For this reason, millions of Germans came to believe that the defeat had come not from the front, but from within, as the result of a betrayal. This belief would in time become an extraordinarily dangerous political tool. But we'll address that in a moment. For now, there is the Treaty of Versailles, and the bill presented to Germany, 132 billion gold marks in reparations. In today's terms, approximately $400 to $500 billion. For a tired and shattered economy trying to heal its war wounds, this figure was effectively impossible. And here came the first great catastrophic decision. How would Germany pay this debt? Its gold reserves had been depleted throughout the war. There was no foreign currency. But there were printing presses. The Reichsbank, Germany's central bank, had already been financing public deficits by printing money throughout the war. Now it continued. Slowly at first, then with ever-accelerating rhythm. And it is at this point that someone from roughly 300 years earlier enters our story. Richard Cantillon, an Irish-French banker and economist who lived in the 18th century, someone who emerged from the practice of banking to write its theory, extraordinarily sharp in his thinking. In his work published in 1755, he said this: "When the money supply increases, the new money does not distribute equally throughout the economy. It enters at specific points, reaches specific hands first, and those first recipients, those who obtain the new money before prices have yet risen, hold a tremendous advantage. Their purchasing power is high, while the prices of goods are still at their old levels. But as the money circulates and changes hands, prices begin to rise, and by the time it reaches the end of that process, by the time it reaches the ordinary person, it is already too late. Prices have risen, but the money in that person's hand is the same. They have grown poorer in real terms. Today, this mechanism is known as the Cantillon Effect, and Weimar Germany became the most tragic, most documented real-life laboratory of this theory on the stage of history. Now let's lay out the numbers. Be ready, because hearing these is a little strange. In 1914, before the war began, how many German marks did 1 American dollar buy? 4.2 marks. nearly 1-to-1, a solid, reliable currency. After the war, in 1919, this ratio rose to 8. Concerning but manageable. In 1921, 60 marks. The alarm bells should have been ringing by now. In 1922, 7,400 marks. The system was clearly cracking. And by 1923, in January, $1 fetched 18,000 marks. In July, 350,000 marks. In September, 98 million marks. In October, 25 billion marks. And in November 1923, 4.2 trillion marks. For $1, 4.2 trillion. In 1914, it was 1 to 4.2. By the end of 1923, it was 1 to 4,200 billion. This is one of the most violent hyperinflationary periods ever recorded in history. How did this translate into the real life of a person? Consider this. Suppose you are a school teacher. You saved money for years, invested it in government bonds because it was safe, because the state stood behind it. In 1921, those savings could have bought you a comfortable home. By mid-1922, a small car. At the beginning of 1923, perhaps a bicycle. And in November 1923, your entire life savings were enough for a few loaves of bread. A whole lifetime. A few loaves of bread. So who profited from this chaos? And this is the point that allows us to understand precisely what Cantillon was telling us. The answer is surprising. There is a man named Hugo Stinnes, a German industrialist, one of the most fascinating and equally disturbing characters of the Weimar period. Stinnes, before hyperinflation truly erupted, took on enormous amounts of credit in marks, of course. And what did he buy with this money? Real, tangible, concrete assets. Factories, coal mines, railways, hotel chains, newspaper companies. Then inflation came, and as the mark's value slid towards zero, do you know what happened? His debt was still denominated in marks, and he paid it off for practically nothing. The real assets, meanwhile, remained in his hands, their value preserved or increased. By 1923, Stinnes controlled more than 1,500 different companies. The press called him the inflation king. He grew wealthy while the German people went bankrupt. And this was not coincidence. This is precisely what Cantillon said. New money does not reach everyone equally. For those who understood the system, who stood in the right place at the right time, this was an opportunity for a wealth transfer the likes of which history had rarely seen. But those like Stinnes were a minority. The real story was that of the majority of the middle stand. That is the German word for this class, the middle class. Teachers, lawyers, small business owners, retirees, civil servants, engineers. The backbone of Germany. The vast majority of them kept their savings in mark-denominated bank accounts or government bonds. Why? Because it seemed prudent. Because obeying the rules, trusting the state, behaving responsibly was a good thing. And it was precisely these virtues that destroyed them. Let us look at daily life. At the peak of 1923, factories were paying their employees twice a day. The morning wage had to be spent during the lunch break, because by evening, that money would have less purchasing power. Women waited at factory gates, ready to rush to the market the moment wages were distributed. Even an hour's delay could change the prices of items in the basket. And then there is that famous wheelbarrow story. This is real, not legend. People had to carry billions of marks in order to go grocery shopping. In one account, a man went to the market with a wheelbarrow full of money. He went inside to check the prices, leaving the barrow briefly outside. When he came back, the money was still there in its bags, but the wheelbarrow was gone. The thief had left the money and taken the cart. The money was worthless. The iron cart was valuable. You might laugh at this story, but right behind the laughter comes a shudder. Because in a world so warped, people no longer know what to trust. And history shows us that people who have lost their faith, who have lost what they had, whose belief in the system is broken, begin searching for a way out. Any way out. November 1923, the very month that $1 reached 4.2 trillion marks. In Munich, a beer hall called the Burgerbräukeller That night, a charismatic young politician takes the stage and attempts to overthrow the Weimar government. The event known in history as the Beer Hall Putsch fails. Hitler is arrested. But one must consider, why were so many people there that night? Why were so many people ready to support an attempted coup? Because faith in the system had been utterly exhausted. Millions of people who had lost their savings, who had trusted the state, who had followed the rules and who now had nothing left were desperate. And history has shown us time and again, societies experiencing economic collapse open their doors to leaders who offer simple answers to complex problems and point to a powerful enemy. The Nazi Party had membership counted in the hundreds in 1919. During the hyperinflationary period of 1923, it rose to the tens of thousands. Every wave of economic crisis brought the party new members. Hyperinflation was certainly not the sole cause of Hitler's creation. History never works in such a one-dimensional way. But without this economic devastation, that soil would not have been so fertile. Perhaps the most heavily priced economic policy era in history began in 1923 Germany with those printing presses. So how did all this madness stop? The answer to that question is both interesting and instructive. In November 1923, Germany introduced a new currency called the Rentenmark. Hjalmar Schacht, the new Reichstag president, proposed this: "We will back this new currency with German land." Technically, this was not a truly robust form of collateral. Most economists would agree on that. But psychology is a decisive force in economics. People trusted this new currency. One Rentenmark was set equal to 1 trillion old marks, and almost immediately the hyperinflation stopped. One of history's most bitter chapters closed in this way. This always leads me to reflect. Money is ultimately a social agreement. Its value comes from the belief the society using it places in it. When that belief breaks, when you look behind you, even the most powerful piece of paper becomes a meaningless object. What does all this tell us today? One must be careful here, because it is very easy to fall into error. Not every instance of money printing is Weimar. Not every inflation gives birth to hyperinflation. Those who see this history and shout, "Here it comes again," exist in every era, and that is a constantly repeated mistake. But the Cantillon Effect is real, and that mechanism is still operating. When new money enters the economy, who does it reach first? Who spends before prices rise? Who is the last to learn the reality of what is happening? These questions remain current, remain sharp. While researching Weimar at the British Library, I came across an interview with Reichstag President Rudolf Havenstein. Right in the middle of all this chaos, in 1923, someone asked him, "Why are you not protecting the value of money?" And Havenstein answered, "Protecting the value of money is not my duty. Supplying the demand for money is my duty." When I read that sentence in the quiet reading room of the British Library, the hairs on my arms stood on end. The president of a central bank. That sentence. And under that understanding, the Reichsbank truly did nothing but keep printing money. Millions, then billions, then trillions of marks per day, until the machines stopped. The lesson Weimar leaves us with is this: printing money is not a magical solution. It is a policy of postponement. Real economic imbalances and real debts surface sooner or later. And when they do, the bill is presented in its heaviest form to those who followed the rules, who trusted the state, who believed in the system. To the Mittelstand, to the ordinary person, this is not inevitable, but it is a recurring pattern in history. And there is one more thing, perhaps the most important of all. This story shows us that money is not merely an economic force, but a political one. When you collapse a country's currency, you are not only emptying the wallets of its citizens, you are also dissolving their trust in the system, their belief in the future, their attachment to the social contract. And into that void someone always steps.